what we saw last time is that there are 4 categories of nefesh behemis, of animal soul. And they are called Shol, Chamol, Seh, V'Sanma.
What page are you on?
144. Shol, Chamol, Seh, V'Sanma. We explained what they mean. And the Rebbe said that the one that is most relevant today is the Seh. And the Seh means that the person is like a sheep, a wayward sheep. Just follows anyone who shows any leadership. And so he says the Jews in today's situation, most of the Jews in the world are following other people's lead. They don't have a sense of where they need to go, so they're a wayward sheep. But he says, for some reason, when Yirmiyahu mentions this, he says a wayward sheep is Israel. And Israel is the name of the higher stature of the Jewish people. It's not the Yaakov, like when he's downtrodden, or Yeshurun, which is also something else. Yisrael. So how could it be that such a high level stoops down so low? He says it's not his essence. So in and of itself, there's already hope here. התהליך הדרוש, המנהי, chapter 5. התהליך הדרוש הוא שיהודי, בכל מקום שהוא בא, צריך להנהיג את הרוחניות שהיא המציאות האמיתית של העיר כולה, הסביבה כולה והמדינה כולה. He says the true order of the world is that the Jews should lead. He says here that when he means leadership, he means spiritual leadership. That the Jews should have provided the spiritual leadership for everybody, for the city that they're in, their environment, the entire country. במקום זה הוא מאבד את שתונותיו ולא זו בלבד שאינו משפיע עד שאף הופך למושפע ומחכה את השטויות של המדינה ושל הסביבה ושל העיר. So instead of being a leader and taking everyone higher and closer to godliness, so he follows them and they're narishkeit, they're nonsense. במקום שישפיע על כל סביבתו לגבי כל פרט שהשולחן ערוך יהיה הפוסק, הופכת הסביבה להיות הפוסק שלו. והשוכן הופך להיות לדידו הפוסק האחרון שעל פיו אישה קבע את כולו וסתרה. Instead of conducting his life in every detail based on the Shulchan Aruch, he looks to his neighbor. And his neighbor becomes his posek, his ruler, the one who tells him how things should be conducted in his home, in every single detail. עניין זה שעושה פזורה בישראל של היעדר תקיפות ובמידה כזו, עד שאפילו לגבי חינוך הילדים שהם תקוות ויסוד כל בית וכל עם ישראל, מתגלה היעדר תקיפות. He said this in 1955.
Nothing's changed.
Yeah. For most of the Jews, nothing's changed yet. But there's a lot of Jews that have changed from this. In any case, back then, and certainly for many Jews today, living in almost anywhere in the world, including especially the land of Israel, even the lack of resolve about their Yiddishkeit leads to even forsaking the chinuch, the education of their children, which are the foundation and the hope of the entire Jewish people. There's no resolve there either. על ישראל באותם אפילו בגלות הקשה ביותר, גלות מצרים, הם מלמד שיר ישראל מצוינים שם, שלא שינו את שמם ושנם ולבושם. Even in the worst exile, the most difficult exile that we had, which was Egypt, they still were exceptional in the fact, the Jews were exceptional in the fact that they did not change their names, their language, or their dress. ובמקום זה אין בזמננו התקיפות הדרושה ואנשים מחפשים תחבולות שלא יהיה ניכר בילד שהוא יהודי. And in our times, it's exactly the opposite. People are looking for all kinds of ways to ensure that their children don't look Jewish. צריך להיות שכשילד יהודי צועד ברחוב, יהיה ניכר מרחוק שיהודי הולך. אשר ישראל הוא שם מעלה. It should be that when a Jew walks down the street, it should be clear and evident from afar that a Jew is walking. Because Israel is the name of being exceptional. ואילו למעשה מתביישים בכך ומנצלים את כל האפשרויות להסתיר את הדבר. But in practice, people are ashamed of this, and they take every opportunity to conceal their identity. לפי זה ניתן גם להסביר את קושיית הגמרא לגבי דין האבדה. said נכתב רחמנא למה לי. The Gemara asks, why did the verse have to add this category of a sheep, of a lost sheep, meaning that a sheep was given for the person to guard, to safekeep. Why did it have to mention this too? It's pashut, it's simple, that it's among the objects that could be lost and could be misplaced, whatever it is, and something bad happens to them, so of course you're responsible for them. There's a difficulty in a sheep getting lost. It doesn't normally happen.
It's stolen.
Yeah, sheep are stolen as a flock. To see one sheep lost, that's very uncommon. Because the ox, the ass, and a garment, well, the ox and the donkey for sure, they're very individualistic. They don't run around in a flock. So one sheep that gets lost is a big deal. אבל לא בסה. יש חידוש בכלל שיש להחזיר את העבודה כשנדרש ולא בסה. I think it's the opposite. Sorry. I think it's the opposite. I don't remember the Gemara well enough. I didn't prepare it. Could be that it's exactly the opposite. That the seh, the sheep, is easy to return, and all these other things are difficult. Okay, in any case, I don't remember what the Gemara says. מה לעשות באמת בסה? לפי האמור לעיל, ניתן להסביר הדברים ביחס לעבודת האדם, בקצרה לפחות. Based on what we've explained, we can symbolically explain how this all relates to spiritual service. Shol nagach, an ox gores. Chamor, שלמרות ששמש השם בתוקף תקופת תמוז, קריר עליו. The donkey, as we said, is always cold, even in the hottest month of August. Shlom Selma, the garment, Beged Bogdim LaTorah Mitzvot, is, we said that's the feeling of being rebellious against Torah and mitzvot. That's what the garment, because the garment means a beged, which means rebellion. B'chol elu yesh chidush b'chach shem mesugalim lashuv. Well, yeah, it is the opposite. The Gemara says that the sheep is not a chidush. But everything else is meaning the donkey, the ox, and the garment are a chidush that they have to be returned. And so it has different teachings. The Gemara brings different teachings why I would think that you don't need to return them. But the sheep, everybody agrees. In any case, with these three other types of animal soul, there's a big novelty in the fact that they can return to Yiddishkeit. That you can take that type of animal soul and bring it back to Yiddishkeit. It says, V'shaver afalo. He needs healing. He needs forgiveness. V'shaver afalo is from Isaiah. And it literally means, we just read this in the last week's Haftarah. So, Rafa there, says the Radak, means forgiveness. It doesn't mean just to heal. There's a number of places in the Torah, in the Tanakh, that Refuah means forgiveness. I just gave a big class on that. The three places that the Radak brings. In Tehillim, and in Yeshayahu, and in Chronicles, and Divrei Yomim. Three very important psukim where Refuah clearly means forgiveness. This is one of the things they don't teach at med school or in pharmacy. That a person has to hear that he's forgiven in order to heal. Because that's what healing means. But with the wayward sheep, where the only problem is that it's scattered amongst the nation. It's wayward, it doesn't know its direction. It's clear that you have to bring him back because that's his only problem. His only problem is that he's wayward. But an ox that's going to gore you, it's very difficult to catch and bring back. Right? It's much easier than an ox. But really, he says here to look in the Zohar to see this alternate explanation. This is the most difficult one to return. שאין היסוד וההתחלה של כל ארבעת חלקי טור ושולחן ערוך על לבוש מפני המלעיגים, איך יגיע לשולחן ערוך? how can you bring someone back if they're afraid to be Jewish? If they try to conceal their Jewishness? So how can you bring them to? Same problem here in Eretz Yisrael. They're ashamed of being Jewish. Because they're ashamed of being Jewish. We're different. No, you can't. We're all the same. That's why the Supreme Court here is their number one
Enemy.
no, enemy of course is the Orthodox, but their number one goal is assimilation. Anything else they say is a lie. For 72 years, what they've been doing here is trying to assimilate the Jews that live here. And their way to assimilation is very clear. It's a very clear path. They've never lied about it. They've always said we have to make Jews and Arabs completely equal, and the state should not intervene at all in who marries who. That's the most important thing for them. And who's considered a Jew. You can wake up in the morning and say you're Jewish, that's enough. That's the klipa of the Supreme Court. But it wants to assimilate everyone here. They want everyone to be able to marry non-Jews the same way that they marry Jews.
It's interesting where they got the power to do that.
They always had it. That's how it was set up. The whole thing was set up that way. There's always powers that vie for power. There's always groups and elements. So within the old yeshuv, not the old, the new yeshuv as they called it, before 1948, the ones who wanted to assimilate, they naturally gravitated, but even if they didn't, they went in that direction of the legal system. And so when the state was set up, they said, do whatever you want with everything else. We know the majority of Jews are not with us, but we'll take the court system. And they set up a separate court system for the Orthodox. And that way they took control of the only court system that really matters here, which is the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court is in their hands, completely. It's been that way for 72 years. Nobody can get them out. And it's just more of the same. So they've always, they had to pay some tribute to the majority of the population here. So they always had, they made sure that they had enough. Of the 13 judges that they had, or 11, I don't remember how many they had. So there's always one who's from. They have to have one who's from. But that's like, what do you call it? It's just for show. He's always scorned by them. They never treat him with any respect, the other judges. And so it's just what they've been doing for 72 years. So when you don't have that, when you're not afraid, again, the whole fear is that somebody will say that they're Jewish. They hate the fact that they're Jewish. They can't stand the fact that they stand out. They have to be the same as everyone else. They have to be more non-Jewish than the non-Jews. That for them is the ultimate supreme calling. And they see themselves as the only rational, logical, normal force in this whole country. And that's how they've been working for 72 years. So that's very, very hard to when somebody, again, they're not bad people. It's just that they have no pride in their being Jewish. They hate it. If they could get rid of it, they would, and they try to. והחידוש מוכח שגם מידה קשה כזו ניתנת להשיב. אין לך דבר מעמד בפני התשובה. And the chiddush is that even this type of loss, something that got lost, or was misplaced, is very difficult to return. Still, there's nothing that stands in the way of tshuva. בהמשך הפסוק נאמר שפסק הדין והיצא לפשיעה של בגדון כתוצאה מישור חמור סלמה, ואפילו זה הוא עד האלוקים דייניה יבוא דבר שניהם. What is the way to heal this? These four types of animal soul, even the wayward sheep. The way to heal it is by going to the judges. Who are the judges? Because Moshe Rabbeinu, his soul continues to be in the Jewish people. There's always a judge. There's someone who's like the leader, who's like Moshe Rabbeinu. He's the one who gives the strength for people to do tshuva the way they should. That was definitely the Rebbe. Yishalem shnayim l're'eu. He should pay twice to his companion. Re'eu HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What does it mean? His re'eu is companion. Hashem is called our companion. Re'acha v're'a avicha. Your companion, the companion of your father, as the prophet says. So it means paying Hashem twice. Yishalem shnaim le're'eu. In the Pshat, it means paying twice to the person that you faulted against, that you didn't safekeep his object, whatever he gave you to guard. But in the spiritual meaning is that you're paying back to your companion because who gave you the soul? God gave you the soul. So you're paying back twice. What does it mean? ישלם לו בכפליים מכפי לפני החטא, כאמור באיגרת התשובה, היה רגיל לקרוא דף אחד, יקרא שני דפים. Because tshuva means that if I was used to learning one page every day, then to do tshuva, I read 2 pages, I learn 2 pages. It doesn't matter what you're doing. If you gave it 1 shekel to tzedakah, you give 2 shekels. $1, $2, whatever it is. אז ייתן לו הקדוש ברוך הוא מידה כנגד מידה, שהזדונות יהפכו לו לזכויות, וגם הנפש הבהמית תסייע לעבודת השם. And then Hashem returns in light, that his faults become merits. And even the animal soul assists him in serving God. ובדרך פרט, and more specifically, מן הנפש הבהמית שבבחינת שור יהיה רב תבואות בכוח שור. If you have more specifically, if your animal soul is like an ox, then the ox is the most powerful of all the beasts. So you get extra strength. מחמור, יששכר חמור גרם, העבודה של קבלת עול כחמור למסע. From the donkey you get the power to carry a tremendous weight. What does that mean spiritually? It's the ability to have Kabbalah soul, to have complete dedication to your purpose. מיסי פזורה על ישראל שגבל ואמר תהיתי כסה עובד שאין לו תקיפות עצמית יהיה בקש עבדיך מושכני אחריך להימשך אל הקדוש ברוך הוא באופן שלמעלה מטעם ודעת. The wayward sheep, it becomes the end of the pasuk in Tehillim, at the end of Kuf Yotet, right? It's the last pasuk of Kuf Yotet, a long chapter. So there's Ta'iti kaseh oved b'kesh avdecha. I've gone like a wayward sheep. Seek your servant. You say to Hashem, seek me out, find me. So Hashem, when He finds you, He causes you. He's like a shepherd. When the sheep finally sees the shepherd, it runs after it. So Hashem will come to seek you. And when you see Hashem, when you see godliness in your life, you'll be running after it. So it becomes a running after like lemana mitavadah, without any thought. It's just complete dedication to running after Hashem. Misalma, from being a rebellious person, v'reach salmotayich kerech levanon. You become a fragrant garment, one that has the fragrance of the Beis Hamikdash, the same type of fragrance that Yaakov had when he went in to receive the blessings from Yitzchak. כלליות פירושו של דבר הוא שגם הנפש הבהמית מסייעת לעבודת השם, כמו אמר ז"ל, ואהבת את השם אלוקיך בכל לבבך בשני יצריך. So the general principle here is that the animal soul assists you. It becomes what helps you. So now we've only done the first part. There's 2 more parts. This was the hachna, this was the submission. Why is this submission? Because submission is always about the animal soul. Submission in general is about taking the animal soul. But there's another thing here, which plays out throughout the rest, and we don't have time. Maybe we'll look at it next week.
Sunday.
So I'll just say it in short, that submission, separation, and sweetening are 3 forms of progress. There's linear progress, exponential progress, and progress without end. It's completely infinite progress. What's the difference between them? There's incremental small changes that you can do that they lead to what we call submission. Yeah, like you said, if you did 1, you do what? You do 2. If you read 1 page, you read 2 pages. It's small incremental changes. In separation, which here is a completely different issue, it's very deep, very nice, too bad we didn't get to it, then the changes are exponential. Why? Because you're not changing the animal soul, you're focusing only on your divine soul. And when you focus on the divine soul, the changes in your identity are exponential. I say it like this, that if you want to change, there's a book called Atomic Habits. You probably haven't seen it. Atomic Habits. There's a guy called James Clear who wrote a book that's very, very popular. He also has a website. It's a very immensely popular guy. And he did a lot of research on how do people change. One of his first examples is the British cycling team. You know that the British cycling team for 105 years was the worst cycling team in the world. Did you know that? And then within the span of 5 years, they became the best cycling team in the world. And so he attributes it to all these small, minor changes that they made. Each one was like a 1% change. They accumulate. But then he says something very interesting. But he only spends a small amount of time on it. He should have spent a lot more. That you have to also change your identity. It's not enough to change your habits incrementally. You also have to identify differently. If you don't identify as where you want to go, you can't get there. It's asymptotic. You'll never reach it. Because linearly you'll never get there. So you have to have a change of identity. That's what separation is about. So if a person, it doesn't matter if he can be the Arizal or can't. He has to spend half an hour a day acting like he's the Arizal. I know he can't do it for the whole day. He's not built for it. He's not the Arizal. But he can be holy like the Arizal for half an hour. That for sure he can. It says, when you spend half an hour changing your identity, you live in something else that has an exponential impact on how your behavior is. It changes you in ways that no incremental change can do. And finally, in the sweetening stage, it's an infinite change. It's a change that you can't even do by yourself. It's because Hashem creates that change. God creates it himself. He brings the infinite into the finite. That we'll need to see next week.
Be'ezrat Hashem.